Hey now, what's going on with everybody out there in the internet universe and beyond? This is G-Man. That music beats one only thing. That Kel is in the studio at the Matterhorn Studios, and we are about ready to launch episode number 25 of What's the Matter podcast. Kel,
Woo-hoo.
episode 25. I can tell you're excited.
Yes.
It's overwhelming. Hey, we want to welcome everybody again to episode 25. What's the matter with public education today? This is being live streamed and recorded live from the Matterhorn Studios in beautiful Reno, Nevada, sponsored by World Matters Incorporated and created by Big Bongo Productions. Also, let's see, I could call these kind of sponsors now, for sure. Active Life Integrated Health, certainly Skin Tuition. Shout outs, of course, to Mr. Ed Alexander, A Soul is Better, and of course, America Matters Media with all the wonderful programming they have on 9.7 FM here in the Reno region. Again, I got Jay Biggs in the morning, the smooth ride home with Lady J, and, Eddie and America Matters, of course.
Leo
Zaki and Shanimal. And so, yeah, they've got a good mixture of stuff, good wholesome stuff here. So, so what's up, Kel? How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Yeah, not a whole lot going on. Just kind of hanging out, ready for the week.
Yeah, pretty mellow. Are you getting ready for the holidays?
Nah, I don't really do holidays.
I was going to say,
I have no family, no kids, no, so it's not holidays.
Not a big thing, but it's not a bad thing though.
No, not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you don't go all out. You haven't had your pumpkin spice latte or anything like.
No. And I'm not. I just don't.
Yeah.
It's just all a program to me.
Yeah.
It's not a big thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I don't mind. Like Halloween is fun. I'll go out that weekend to a couple different clubs and parties because I have a ton of costumes this year.
So you go to some Halloween parties?
Yeah, I think I will this year. I haven't in a long time, but I think I will this year. What else? Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we don't want you to be alone.
I might see if I can find a Friendsgiving this year. Yeah. And then Christmas is
Yeah.
I don't do Christmas.
Save some money.
Stupid. Like, once my dad died.
Don't be going no Bob Cratchit bomb humbug on people.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Like we used to make a big deal because my dad, his father was, his stepfather was a Jehovah's Witness kind of, they didn't believe, or maybe it was Seventh-day Adventist, whatever the one that doesn't believe in any kind of birthdays or celebrations.
Oh, that was Jehovah's.
That's Jehovah's
Witness.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
my grandma was Jehovah's.
Yeah,
Witness,
he was a Jehovah's Witness, and so for years she had married Mr. Rush, had my Uncle Dale.
I thought you were going to say Mr.
No, Mr. Rush, my dad's dad.
Yeah.
And had my Uncle Dale, divorced him, married this had my dad 10 years later, didn't want another kid. And then divorced Mr. Rush, married this Jehovah guy. He messed up the whole family. She divorced him and remarried Mr. Rush.
Wow.
And this was back in like the 20s and 30s. She just didn't do this shit back then. She was crazy. This woman was nuts. And so, but they were like staunch against no celebrations, no presents, no nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. And so we would make a big deal for him, like birthdays, and we'd really hoop it up for him. So when he died in 2012, my mother and I were just like, yeah, let's cut this shit out. All we're doing is trading money. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't buy me anything. I won't buy you anything. We'll go out to dinner and call it good. So it's been quite a while since there's been any kind of even sentimentality with it. And then when you really look at it.
So you're saying they may be onto something as far as like Jehovah's Witness and holidays and stuff like that. Pagan stuff, right? It's made up.
And that's a whole nother misconception. But it's, I'm just not into what I call the Hallmark holidays that were created.
Yeah. Oh, I
for
see
commercial purposes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And Christmas being one of them.
And Christmas is definitely one of them. It's not Jesus's birthday.
Yeah. You got Black Friday.
Right. Yeah. And Black Friday, I'll tell you about Black Friday. Everybody, the common, reason it's called Black Friday, the one that everybody talks about, is because allegedly that's the day when the merchants go from being in the red all year to the black in retail. That's actually not true. Black Friday was created in Philadelphia when there
Mhm.
were riots from the shopping, and it wasn't a thing yet. It wasn't, and there were primarily African Americans created, like, there were big riots in Philadelphia around
Mhm.
this time in the 70s, and, that's when it got named. But it's now, because of media and the way that commerce is, it's become just a big retail induction
Yeah.
scheme on the
Yeah, and
calendar,
there's no doubt about that. But, so I wanted to, like, kind of, follow up on something that you brought. I can't remember if it's last week or the week before, about us going past a milestone on the number of podcasts that we've done,
Mhm.
the number of episodes. And so it looks here's a couple things. So 90%, I think this is what you were talking about. 90% of podcasts never pass episode 3, according to Riverside and Buzzsprout summaries.
Mhm.
About 90% of new shows drop off before their third episode. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, they
I
say
guess
if you
not
can make it to
surprising.
5,
Uh-huh.
you have a good shot. If you can make it to 20, you're good.
Well, listen to this. So then the average podcast publishes, so I guess there must be some sort of difference between having a podcast and actually publishing a
Okay.
podcast, right?
Okay.
So the average podcast publishes 21 episodes before becoming inactive.
Hmm.
So we're at number 25 today. So that's just a good,
That's interesting.
yeah, right. That was according to Lupec's digital notes that many podcasts, they say, tend to stall out right around the 20th or 21st episode. And without our background, I could understand that
Could too. I could too.
because,
I mean, we do this,
yeah,
and
and
it's difficult. It's
it's
not
surprising for
something.
people. They
You can't
expect,
just sit down
yeah,
and, turn on a mic and start
effort, yeah,
talking.
that
You
goes in it.
absolutely it is.
Here's
Absolutely it
another
is.
one, interesting. So there's about 4.5 million podcasts here in the United States, right? But this is what makes it, or I guess the last one. So this one right here, only 720,000 podcasts have more than 10 episodes,
Huh.
right?
Interesting.
So you start, again, just kind of like weaning yourself, from the crowd, so to speak. And then here's the last one, Amplify. Notes that from the 4 million indexed podcasts, and so that's where I think I'm getting the 4.5 million.
Mhm.
So there's 4.5 million indexed podcasts. Only 155,764 met thresholds of continuity,
Hmm.
just showing large attrition. So this all to say, I just want to say thanks for bringing that stat up. It caused me to kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit and kind of find out exactly. And so far, we're separating ourselves
Yeah, I
from
think so.
people just in that regard. Persistency. We're being persistent. So let's see. So today we're going to talk about public education. I had a couple of guests that are in the public education spectrum. They had to, interestingly enough, get permission to be able to come on a podcast, which I guess is understandable. But
Sure.
at some, in some ways, it's kind of, I could poke fun at that, but it is what it is. But I want to talk to you just, kind of even laying the bed for subsequently when they do come in, because they will come in later on. We'll follow up this segment for sure, this episode. But, just I want to talk about kind of like what it means today. Your, I guess we can go back as far as pre-kindergarten, certainly through 12th grade.
Mhm.
Just talk about everything, from a community context and, funding mix. There's been a lot of changes in the Department of Education with this new administration in the White House right now. But, I want to kind of start out the segment, Cal, I guess. Let's visit something that's the current state of affairs, much like, law enforcement, of course, different avocation, but in the teachers realm, there's states, ours included, that are going through teacher shortages. There's burnout that happens. It's like if you do anything for, I would say, 10 years, there's just kind of
Oh,
like
sure.
most things, there's going to be kind of a certain element of burnout,
Especially with as fast as things change now.
Yeah.
When you get, you think you're doing something, it's working, you do things a certain way, and then somebody wants to come in and just change everything completely.
Yeah, and that's part of like the real world, not just in teaching, but I mean,
Yeah.
through that
Anything.
all the
Yeah.
time, got the new manager that comes in
Anything. Yeah.
got the new manager that comes in and he wants to change everything, or the new general manager or whatever. But in relating to teacher, I guess the first reason that I look at, and I've always said this, is that everybody knows that typically, almost universally across the board, the people that are doing the work, which are the educators on the front line, the
Mhm.
teachers, they don't make very much money at all.
Right.
Right?
Which makes no sense.
Makes no sense, because the way that our capitalistic country works is that, the cream rises to the top. It's supposed to,
Supposed
theoretically.
to.
Yeah, theoretically. And so if you were to say, hey, average teacher starts out at 6 figures a year, I can almost guarantee you that you're going to get more qualified people, because you can increase your criteria for, for you want to kind of have. I always wanted to have an innovative teacher.
Mhm.
There was a teacher here when my kids were in school, and he was in the middle school year, so 7th, 8th grade. His guy was a history teacher, and every time that he had, say, talking about the Revolutionary War, he would dress up like a blue
Oh,
coat
uh-huh.
with like legit stuff,
Uh-huh.
like the legitimate uniform and stuff like that, and teach like that all week long. So it would keep the kids engaged. And nowadays, shoot, kids would probably think that that dude's weird. But I guess the point is, I want to talk about educators a little bit later on, and some of them that have set themselves apart in that regard. Getting back to the pay, there's not very much pay that these educators are getting. And then when you combine that with the workload, because it's not just 6 hours in a classroom, you've got the prep work, you're grading papers, you're creating lesson plans and stuff like that. And you have
Mhm.
a lot of these hidden hours. And so by the time they've done some tracking, by the time you really break down how much teachers work, and this was a few years ago, but they're saying you can get these guys down to like $6 an hour
Mhm.
from actually the time that they're putting into their
Sure.
job.
Sure.
And so there's certainly, there's some teachers that are there, for, I guess, the wrong reasons. Let's put it like
Oh,
that.
20.
Not for the
Yeah,
kids,
yeah.
necessarily.
Not so much
Um,
anymore. I mean, you don't get people that get into teaching jobs for the summers off and the benefits like you used
mhm.
to. It's
Yeah,
the advantages just aren't there,
yeah, exactly.
especially with having to put up with the kids and parents.
Now, what about, so what do you want to comment on about the pay? We know it's a reality, but is there
I have
anything
mixed
that we
feelings.
can
I have
ever
very
do about it? Yeah.
I have very mixed feelings about the whole thing because I
Mhm.
do not believe in the public education system.
Right.
It's an indoctrination machine,
Yeah.
period. So I struggle to want to pay people more to continue brainwashing
Yeah. Well, do you
our children.
remember what at least the company line is of why? Now, I have one of my degrees is in education, in business education, but I did not want to get into
Teaching.
the
Right.
indoctrination. I wanted to get into something where I could prepare young people to be more equipped for life
Sure.
as an adult. That's how I raised my kids. And that if I was an instructor and if I was an educator, that's what I would be wanting to do. As corny as it sounds, just like, hey, the kids need to know how to do laundry. They need to know how to.
Wipe their butts. We just had this conversation,
Yes, I don't
but
know
that
where
is a
that's coming
parental
from,
failure.
for sure. But kids do in a lot of ways have challenges that we did not have
Oh, big
when
time.
we were growing up, and we had advantages that I can admit that kids don't have nowadays, even as silly as it is, our independence, right? There was no tracking devices.
Right. My parents didn't give a
We
shit. They're
had
like,
we
get
had
out. Don't come back till the lights
total
come on.
independence,
Like
whereas
forced independence.
it's not, and I'm not saying that total independence is good for kids nowadays,
No, it's
because
not.
you need that oversight, and I can only
A
imagine the
lot of us were
trouble I would have gotten in if my kids could have kept track of me, how many fibs I would have gotten
sure.
caught in, just like, hey, where did you say? You're just like, oh yeah, we had practice till 7, just like, well, this GPS says you were in Pismo Beach.
I
half
would get
hours
in
away.
trouble. I lived in such a small town that my parents wouldn't let me go out without a plan. We never knew what the hell we were going to do. It was
Yeah.
either mall, the movies, or Friendlies, or Ground Round, like
Yeah.
some combination of that. It didn't matter. It didn't
Yeah.
mean we were
You
only
just
ever
wanted to
going.
be with your
We
friends
just
and
wanted
away
to get
from your
out.
parents.
But we never, I mean, it was going to be one of those things. We didn't know which all the time. So we would just be like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go to the movies with Jenny. And then some asshole would see us at Friendly's and go, "Hey, I saw Kelly at Friendly's the other day. She was supposed to be at the movies."
Yeah.
So, it was just
the inadvertent, "You dirty rat," you know.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that when something happens too. And they always know who the honest kid is.
Right.
Right. And they know they can ask them, they're going to get one of my friends from, God, I think it was about 18 or something like that. We're doing something we shouldn't be doing. Mom confronted me on it. And I'm just like, "Mom, you're crazy." Went and took a shower. And then she'd get out, get ready to go. It's like 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night and just getting the evening going. And she says, "So let me ask you about this again." Yeah, I'm not mentioning specifics, but she's calling me on it again. I'm like, "Mom, stop this." And then, "I'm telling you the truth." And she's just like, "Well, if you're telling me the truth, then how come, Davey over here told me?" It's just like, I looked at him. He's just like, "Grady, I can't lie to your mom, man." He just totally broke down. I'm like, I was doing my best performance.
That's funny.
But so now, just want to remind you. So now, under this premise, again, think back again. A few weeks ago, we're talking about the 1920s, and you would have been a flapper and stuff like that. So thinking back then, people, there were some ignorant, non-educated population. When you think about being able to read, write, do math, read, write, do math, those
Read,
three
write,
things,
arithmetic,
not everybody could do that. As a matter of fact, I mean, there was a small, lower percentage. It was less than 50% of the people that were here could do that. But it was, again, you're talking farm, still had all that stuff going on.
Sure.
There, the Industrial Revolution was just kind of like, getting going and whatever. But the education system started because they wanted to. So in theory, having a educated population of having people that could communicate, read, write, and do math. You would agree with that premise?
Yes.
We're on
Yeah,
the
there
same
are
page.
basics. There are fundamental basics.
Yeah. So what's happening is that application was working. Say you get to the point where the 50s and the 60s and everything. And then I have some notes here for us to discuss later on, but some things basically happened where, here's one thing: no child left behind. Where it used to be, we would go to class and everybody knew that an A was the best and you don't want to get an F, right? And then there was different degrees of genetics, home environment, all these different factors that may have given some kids an advantage over other kids. But the ones that didn't say had the advantage, and then they found out that they were a little bit behind as compared to others, ultimately there was something built in there, right? Where they're saying, "Hey, I'm not measuring up to my peers. And if I want to, if I desire to, I need to get help from my teacher, from my parents, from my peers, if I want to."
From a tutor, yeah.
Or a tutor, yeah, if I want to, if that desire is there, right? And it was almost built in where the desire was going to be there because we want to be accepted, we want to fit in, and things like that, right? So now with the No Child Left Behind concept and the participation trophies and all these different things that are meant, on the surface, and they have this positive ideal of saying, okay, we don't want the kids' self-esteem to suffer, but that comes at a cost.
Right.
That comes at a cost of the kids having to fight through adversity. And so over time, I think a couple generations certainly removed where this inclusivity and making sure that everybody feels good automatically without them having to put in effort, has been a degradation
Big time.
to our school
And
system.
where that originated from was that there was a psychologist by the name of Carl Rogers who came up with the concept of unconditional positive regard in therapy, where no matter what you approach it, it's a little more detailed than this, but the basis of it is that pretty much regardless of what you're being presented with in therapy, you treat it from a positive standpoint. I understand the premise behind it. It's not effective. It's not effective because many issues we have are not positive and can't be made positive. You can create a positive outcome by going against it or remedying it or whatever, but the situation itself is never going to be positive. And so trying to it's to me, it's like delusion light in a way,
Mm.
because not everybody can see through that veneer to the issue. So you get, if you put fancy, little fancy faces on everything and, you know, rejiggering the language like we do, political correctness and things like that, it obscures the root cause. And then you're only dealing with symptoms and the problems perpetuate.
Mm.
So I have a problem with the idea that everything should always be approached with the love and the light, and it's, that
Yeah, you
something
need.
positive can be made from it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying too, is that at the end of the day, no matter what, this is a tough world. This is a challenging spectrum that we live this physical life in. While we're here, there's whatever you want to call it. There's evil. There's
Mhm.
there's bad things that are there. Um, but hey, if you're caught in the middle of a Serengeti, with a tribe of lions, all of a sudden they turn evil too, and they're just trying to survive. And so, again, not to take away from what we're talking about here, but the shortages and the burnout, why recruitment, and more important than recruitment is probably retention, because you do want some consistency. You don't want this revolving door that are in there. But I think that, man, we're definitely going to be, coming through these post-pandemic pains that we're going to be experiencing here for the next 10, 20 years. I can remember, for example, like did you ever cut school in high school, or were you a good kid?
My mother taught in my school,
That's no
so
fun.
she
Yeah.
would take me out
Yeah.
for what she called mental health days, where I would
Yeah.
go to work with her.
Yeah. Well, that's nice.
So yeah,
But that's
yeah,
not the
no, that
same.
would,
You don't
but
get the
no,
same
no,
you
I
don't get
never,
the same
no, I
rush
never,
as
ever, ever,
like cutting
no,
class.
I never cut class.
And we
ever.
had to, of course, you had attendance slips,
Right.
right? And so, I can say this now, there was no statutes of limitations I have to worry about. So we had hookups, right? So our truant officer would sometimes go to parties with
Okay.
us, right? That's crazy in
Yeah, it
itself.
is.
He was very, very cool. I'm sure he was very selective,
Mm.
and
How
but
old was he?
oh, I mean, everybody's an old person,
Right.
back there, but he was probably in
Probably.
his 20s,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but with these slips, we had a friend that worked in the attendance office,
Uh-huh.
and so we'd just get this
Yep.
package of slips, and the whole thing was the timestamp,
Yeah.
right? So I was really good at tracing.
How funny.
Yeah, so you'd have white that you wrote on, blue or yellow. The yellow is what the teacher accepted, the blue was like, and I think there was one for a medical reason or something like
Uh-huh.
that, but the teachers look for the yellow. And so you try to catch them when they're like at the beginning of class, and they're busy, trying to get things sorted, or whatever. But anyway, I would make $5 a pop, for doing that. Had a stack of those things, and back in the day. So, but anyway, I'm talking about that, talking about war stories, and I'm talking about absenteeism,
Mhm.
first of all, is my note here. So versus then versus now, would you say that absenteeism is better or worse than they were when we were in school? Kids not going to class.
Oh, it's gotta be worse
It's
now. It's gotta be
worse.
so much worse because
Yeah.
because first of all, parents are so distracted. They've
Yeah.
got 2 and 3 jobs in a lot of cases. They're they're stuck on their phone. No, back in the day,
Yeah.
our parents were like hawks,
Well, and that's why, like, from
especially
a
with school. Deal.
indoctrination
Uh-huh.
factory, and then they freak out, is about the absenteeism because they get federal funds, for everybody's
Exactly.
butt that's in the seat,
That's
right?
right.
And so, but another factor that why absenteeism is increased, is because the kids, because of the easy curriculum, the real sharp ones, the
Uh-huh.
smart ones, they just skate and they don't
Oh,
have
yeah.
to go to
We
class.
did too.
Yeah.
I was so bored.
So they get bored, they just check out. The
Sure.
kids check out.
Sure.
By the time they're sometimes 16 years old, and they
Mhm.
still got 2 years to go,
Sure.
but they figure out a way to kinda game the
Coast.
system. Yep.
Mhm.
and get through. So another thing I want to kind of talk about, something as when I was coaching back in 2010, right when cell phones were just starting to come out, and they're just allowing the kids to carry them on campus in the classrooms and stuff like that. And I was just like, this is going to be crazy. Now, even when I was going through my practicum, if I would go substitute teach or something like that, again, I was one of those. Just a little bit strict, I guess, but there was no cell phones. Like
Right.
I'm not going to take them, but you can't bring them out. You
Right.
can't, there was none of that happened because again, it's so simple. It's just like if you were passing notes.
Mhm.
Teachers didn't let you pass notes.
Mm.
They're saying, hey, give me that. And they'll read it in front of the class, right?
Mhm.
Try to embarrass you, but they wanted you paying attention to
Mhm.
what they were saying. So
Right.
if you're checking your text, you're on social media, and all that stuff, you can't pay attention. You can't be saying, "Hey, my mind works like that, where I can do 2 things at once." So maybe some can, but most
Not
can't.
as a
So
kid.
I knew that. So phones, and now as I see it, there's a lot of states that are passing in their schools. They're taking the cell phones away,
Mhm.
and people are freaking
Finally.
out. The parents are the ones that are mainly freaking out.
That that's stupid.
Just
That's
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
So,
On
but
what basis? "Oh, my kid can't contact me."
Hmm?
Could you contact your parent when you were in school?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
And you didn't want
So
to.
you would manage your classroom the same way,
Yes.
right? You would say, "Sorry, kids, you can get your phone back on
At the
recess,
Yep,
lunchtime, or whatever."
absolutely.
All right. Now, what do you think about this? Because you're in this world. Okay, so totally different. So back, it would be a bad thing. You would get an F for sure if you plagiarized. If you
Oh,
didn't,
God, yeah.
if you didn't, if you took some information, quoted something, and if you didn't have your reference, right, you would get marked off for that. Sometimes failed. You always had to have this, and so now the kids risk talking about AI. Now the kids risk getting caught for cheating.
Mhm.
That's already happened,
Mm.
and I don't know, man, they just lose, I think, an opportunity to really make their brains work. I think that, hey, that's fine having a software program that can do all the work for you. But if your software program went on the kaputs and you still had to operate the company and get the supply chain going and stuff like that, and you had to break down and do it manually with a pen and
Oh
paper,
my goodness.
oh my
God
god.
forbid.
Yeah, so I think that's, still key that, but what do you think about AI in the classroom? Is it a threat to education? Is it a tool? I think you're gonna say it's both. I
It
think
it
you're gonna say
is,
it's
it
both,
is.
yeah.
It primarily, it's a threat. They're already
Mhm.
finding out that people who are relying on AI, are losing brain power
In education.
in general, just
Yeah,
in day-to-day life.
yeah.
So,
Well, we
yeah, we
use
have to
it,
be
but,
very
like,
careful.
we're using it. I'll use it to, say, save me a couple hours to put, an outline
An
together,
outline
or
or marketing
yeah.
or, for business tools,
You're not
things
gonna
like
be able to
that.
replace a conversation
No,
with a deal you're trying to close.
no,
You can't use AI for that. So, you're gonna need to have some people skills and some communication skills somewhere along the line.
absolutely, absolutely, and, it's gonna be interesting to as this fleshes out to see, what happens and
What do you think about, the state of affairs with testing? How everything is all it's just all whacked out. Because different students learn different ways,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of people that, the memorization, the rote learning and stuff like that, they thrive in that. And then there's students that learn more by doing, right? So you can
Mhm.
conceptualize something, but then
Yeah,
there are more
I'm
people
much
that are
more
more
hands-on.
hands-on.
Yeah.
And the best way is a combination, right?
Mm.
And I think another disconnect is the things that kids learn in schools are the things that they should be learning. That whole thing, just like, I'm never going to use algebra in real life. No, you will.
It
It's
you may
like,
not use you may not sit down
consciously,
and do,
you know,
equations and figure it
yeah,
out. You absolutely use algebra in everyday life.
for sure.
Absolutely do.
Yeah.
And learning algebra isn't so much about how to do the math
All
itself,
else is an unknown variable. Yeah. You
but
could be doing algebra in relationships.
that's very true. That's very but it's more of it's more about teaching you how to learn and how to think, you know what I mean, rather than
Hmm.
actually sitting and finding out mathematical answers,
Right.
you know. But it definitely does apply.
So I have this note here. So for school climate, belonging and safety, predict engagement much more than test preparation and parent partnerships.
What's the question?
Well, it's not really a question. It's kind of just a point.
Oh.
It's mentioning kind of like the group dynamics. When you're in school, it's where you're away from your parents. And then your surrogate parents are, of course, your teachers and your administrators and things like that. But all of your other peers, it's the Lord of the Fly stuff. You're looking to be accepted. You're looking for a place to belong. And that's where sometimes the first time that you hear somebody else say cuss and say a bad word,
Mhm.
right? But your parents aren't there. Your teachers aren't there. And so there's that little taboo aspect. You're just like, oh, this is kind of fun. Nobody knows about this. So that's a way
Getting
of
away with
gaining
it.
acceptance, because as long as you don't tell, as long as you don't tattle, then everybody's going to kind of accept you, into the crowd. But but I guess what I'm saying here is that belonging and then feeling safe often supersedes your priorities with, say, prepping for a test. And it also is untouchable sometimes because there's only so much that partnerships with parents, whether it's with each other's parents or whether it's parents with the school system and stuff like that. I guess what I'm saying is that there's always this little, as far as the school climate goes, there's always going to be this little secret society that the kids have amongst themselves
Of course.
that we as adults can't tap
Of course. Well, I mean, look at today with I mean, we had it too, but it spreads like wildfire now because the media, the language,
into.
like the Gen X or the Gen Z,
Yeah.
you
Their
know,
little codes that
this
would
you know,
kinda like
skibbity toilet,
yeah.
Riz,
Well, we talked about that in one of our
whatever. Yeah.
episodes, our little
Yeah.
slangs and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
do you remember what,
Charisma. Yeah.
charisma, there you
Yeah.
go.
And
Alright.
so, I've always been real up on that, but I've been a linguist my whole life.
Uh-huh.
And so I've always caught on
Mhm.
real quick to
Mhm.
that kind of thing and slang. Like my best friend in not in high school, the one after, well, my one in high school and I did too, but the one that I had right after high school, particularly, like we had a whole language of our just that we created between the two of us.
Yeah.
So, but that I think is a big part of generational culturalism is exclusionary language that they think that adults, don't know or can't use or whatever.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
you're probably untethered, you don't have
right.
kids, but have you picked up anything on the radar regarding education, especially locally, that you say, "I like that. That's working. We need more of that."
You know, I have to say no. I haven't heard anything positive at
Uh-huh.
all about
Okay.
Washoe County schools. The only thing I ever hear about is what they're doing wrong
Yeah.
and
Well, I
and
mean,
Jeff
we're
Church trying to fight it.
we're always in, there's 50 states and we're somewhere between
Like
number 50, I
yeah.
think, 48.
The main reason for that is because Clark County drags down the rest of the state.
That's true.
It's
Statistically.
statistically,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't be if we could remove Clark County from the equation. We used to Washoe used to, or Nevada used to be 16th.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that high anymore. I think it's still it's lower than that, but it's not nearly as bad as 50.
Yeah, come on, Vegas.
Yeah.
Oh, man. What is going on? Well, we got something going here. I think. Hear that in the background?
Are you gonna make me laugh?
I hope so. Got some things lined up here. A little break here in the action. The laughing crickets segment. You think? Are we going to keep this?
The segment?
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay. I want to make sure. That you're
I
having
don't see
fun.
why not.
Okay. Like, you know what? We'll take it out if our listening audience ever says to.
Yeah, if anybody ever says that's really cheesy.
But I like Ed's suggestion. If we had a guest in the studio, we'd probably just
Yeah, if we
forge
have a
on
guest,
through the
nah.
conversation.
But no, I think if it's just the two of us, I think it works.
All right. Well, and as you suggested before, I'm going to try to today. I'm going to do a combination. I'm going to do a combination of me telling the jokes and have a couple little ancillary things set up digitally. So let's see if I'm able to pull this off. So as normal, your suggestion is that we should try to keep the jokes pertaining to the topic that we're kind of talking about today. So in a general sense, education, teachers, students, that type of thing. So this first one here, Cal, you ever had sex education?
Not really.
You didn't in school?
No, my parents, my mother was really good
Yeah.
about, and she didn't restrict what I read.
You didn't have to go through the slideshows and
No.
stuff like that.
No.
Interesting. I think the first introduction was like 6th grade, and then you had more in 7th grade. But by the time you're in 8th grade, you don't want to talk about it anymore. But
No,
anyway.
we didn't. I mean, we had they put the girls in one room and told us about our periods, and they put the boys in the other room and told them about jock itch. But
all that stuff.
Yeah, but no, as far as the actual birds and bees, no.
Okay, well this first one in the Laughing Crickets section is about sex education. So a boy gets an F in sex education from his teacher, Mrs. Hall. And this comment that he made after he got out of class explains why.
I can't believe it. I want to kick Mrs. Hall in the nuts for this.
That's why he got an F. Because he wants to kick Mrs. Hall in the nuts.
If I was her, I'd be impressed. I'd be like, cool, you recognize that I had more balls than you.
All right. That one didn't land well. All right. We're going to try again.
Oops. Making noise there.
Yeah, stop being so noisy.
Right.
All right. Let's see. I have another one queued up here. This third one, the bonus one, I'm going to tell it all by myself. So, all right. Let's see. What the heck was I thinking? This is another one about sex education as I'm reading this. But it has driver's education also typed in.
Okay.
Why don't they teach, Kel, why don't they teach driver's ed and sex education on the same day in schools that are in the Middle East? I'm going to say that again. In the Middle East, schools in the Middle East, why don't they teach driver's ed and sex education on the same day?
I don't know.
They don't want to wear out the camel.
Oh, God. Ooh, that's bad.
I can't believe it.
Oh, goodness gracious. I was wondering about that one.
Yeah.
All right, now this next one. This is the redneck. This is the redneck joke.
Okay.
I'm going to try to, it's long, so you have to pay attention to this. I'm going to be disappointed if you don't get this one. It's going to be because you're multitasking.
No, I got you.
Okay. There's these two Tennessee rednecks. Let me see. Let me get a narrator voice here. Two Tennessee rednecks, Bubba and Jim Bob, are sitting at their favorite bar, drinking beer. Bubba turns to Jim Bob and says, I'm tired of going through life without an education. Tomorrow, I think I'll go to the community college, sign up for some classes. Jim Bob thinks it's a good idea, and the two leave. Now, the next day, Bubba goes down to the college, meets with the dean of admissions, who signs him up for 4 basic classes: math, English, history, and logic.
Okay.
Bubba says, logic? What's that? And the dean says, I'll show you. Do you own a weed eater? Yeah. Then logically speaking, because you own a weed eater, I think that you would have a yard. Well, that's true. I do have a yard. Well, I'm not done, the dean says. Because you have a yard, I think logically that you would have a house. Yeah, I do have a house. And because you have a house, I think that you might logically have a family. Well, I have a family. I'm not done yet. Because you have a family, then logically, you must have a wife. Yeah, I do have a wife. And because you have a wife, then logic tells me you must be a heterosexual. I am a heterosexual. That's amazing. You're able to find out all that because I have a weed eater. And so excited to take the class now, Bubba shakes the dean's hand, leaves to go meet Jim Bob at the bar. He tells Jim Bob about his classes, how he signed up for math, English, history, and logic. Logic? Jim Bob says. What's that? Bubba says, I'll show you. Do you have a weed eater? Well, no. Well, then that means you're gay. Okay. That was long.
Oh, it's a stretch of logic there.
Thank you for
That was funny.
Thank you for playing along. All right, now on with the show. Segment 2 here, Kel. Now, how we got here. So, some history and turning points. 2015. How old were you back then? Dating you?
In 2015?
Yeah.
That was 10 years ago, 47.
Okay, so you're definitely an adult,
Oh, yeah.
and so
10 years ago?
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
It is only 10 years ago.
It seems like a long time, but
I think, my point that I wrote down here is that, the Every Student Succeeds Act, 2015, right? So you had more state flexibility, kind of like the municipalities that wanted to prioritize, more equality, or however they wanted to frame it. Whereas there's some states that, still kind of held to some of the older, ideals.
dated.
Accountability remains in some of them, so to speak. But, both of them, both approaches, were trying to fix things, right? And what inevitably happened is that, would you agree, like you talked about in the beginning of the show, our education system, our public education system is broke.
Oh, no question.
And for those that don't think that it's broke, you can't argue that there are
That it's
a wide
quality
range of areas
issues.
that can be improved upon. Bridging, from where we are into what we should, be practicing in today's classroom. Some things are going to be inherited, right? So they're dealing with kind of like the testing culture, these compliance gaps and things like that are happening. But what do you think about the parents' options now where, it's kind of like all there was the public school system or the private, and most people can't afford private, so they were left with the public school system. So now there's more options. We're hopefully being able to put some things together with one of our schools, or actually the whole school system, Washoe County school system, with an apprenticeship program relating to podcasting and broadcasting and things like that. But there's career technology education pathways. There's charter schools and things like that, homeschooling, that parents have much more options. So are you in line and on board with these other options?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not, it's the best option for every family, that's not going to be the case. But parents should have the option to homeschool or send to charter or send to Montessori or, private or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And if a lot of times, of course, parents would like to do that, but they have to work in
Mhm.
order to survive, in
Right.
order to pay bills and things like
And,
that.
and to be fair, very few are even qualified.
That's the whole problem. I think that there are some aspects of saying, okay, well, we're going to homeschool our kids. And then teaching is not easy,
It's very difficult.
right? Especially like if you've been out of algebra class for 20 years. And then all of a
Exactly.
sudden you have to relearn this and teach it to your kids. And, and so it's not an easy quagmire to navigate,
Mm-mm.
for sure. Do you know what is a micro school?
That I
And,
haven't heard of.
Yeah, check that out real quick. And project-based learning, I love this approach because again, it's like let's say get back to that algebra situation where they're saying, I don't need algebra. I'm never going to use this in life. And then you actually have, say, a class project to where the things that the kids don't think they will ever use, you actually say, hey, this semester we're going to work on this project right here. And so what they're using is built into it. You're not going to put it in front of their face. And for those of you who said you're never going to use, this is why we're doing this. No, you, as an educator, you want to bake these things in to where they're learning and they don't even know they're learning. They're interested in things that they never thought that they would be interested in, because that the educator, I think, is the very special component.
Big time.
Just like anything, right?
Mhm.
You can have, I mean, even going into the religious realm, right? You can have, say, a teenager that's being forced to say, go to church every Sunday because that's the way that the parents are raising them. But here comes this pastor or a teacher that gets it, that reaches them, and it doesn't have to be preachy.
Right.
You're asking them
Right.
about their life and their challenges and things like that, and you're able to teach them these strategies that, say, Jesus taught us, but you don't dress it like that.
Mhm.
and I don't have any specific example. I'm just kind of riffing here, but the project-based learning aspect, again, speaks to the teaching by doing, where there's something that's long-term that the kids are working on. And what do you think about early college credits and where the kids, and I like it because the kids do get bored sooner than they used to. They get fed a lot of information, that we had to wait till later in life to learn about, and they know
Mhm.
this by the time they're 12 now.
Mhm.
I was worried about, shoot, I hope I hit a little league home run at 12, and God, these guys are just so far ahead of it. But being able to, for those that have the maturity to graduate early, get college credits while they're still in high school. What do you
Mhm.
think about that
I'm
stuff?
good with that too,
Okay.
because that probably would have benefited me.
Mm.
Was
You were on it, huh?
bored.
You were a good. You were
I
on it,
was
yeah.
a good student,
Yeah, good
and I was in what they called the gifted and talented program, which wasn't a great thing. It was a segregation. It was a elevation that
Mhm.
put us above other, like, the quote unquote regular kids, but didn't do anything for us,
Mhm.
like, to really benefit.
You
It was
got categorized. Those are the smart kids over
right,
there,
right.
and
It was
hey,
just
it's
an extra
been,
bullying,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
bullying factor,
Mhm.
when really all it did was make the adults pat each other on the back and look good. And,
Mhm.
it was
Interesting.
crap.
Yeah.
The whole program was bullshit. And I was the worst of the kids that were in it. I had the lowest IQ. I was 132.
Oh, wow.
And, the other kids were 140 and 160. And so that was another point of comparison. Why can't you be as good as, why aren't you as smart as, no, you're in the gifted program. And so, all
Mhm.
that. It was so much crap. And so, I do see a place for it if the programs have evolved exponentially. I mean, literally, that was 50 years ago. So what they've now since done with it, I was in the very first wave of it, the first program they ever had. And um, there are good programs that do recognize kids who are exceptional and can put them in more accelerated learning, and they don't treat it as a segregation, like, you're better than, or you're smarter than, or no, you're just different. You're wired different. You learn differently. So it's not as much. Back then just a big segregate. It was just one more segregation. Now it's more integrated. So yeah, I don't have problems with it at all.
So there, some of the history, the common school movement. Okay, have you ever heard of Horace Mann?
Mhm.
So yeah, he was the man that started the everything. The father of American education.
Yep.
Started in Massachusetts Board of Education in 1837. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
That's almost 200 years ago, man. That is crazy, huh? Wow. And I don't know how I feel about this, but he advocated for a universal public school system funded by taxes. And, I mean, as long as they're, like I said, taxes is a funny discussion with me. But beyond education, I like this part. He was an abolitionist and a reformer for mental health and temperance.
Mhm.
And of course, when you say the word temperance, I'm assuming that they're talking about, or
Moderation.
yeah, the temperance movement and stuff like that. And then, of course, Brown versus Board of
Yep.
Education, 1954. It was the legal end to segregation. The implementation, let's see, was anything but even. It was uneven implementation, but very pivotal in our nation's history.
And compulsory education, mandatory kids going to school, is only 100 years old.
Interesting.
The start of the 20s, 65% of children in the U.S., if they attended school at all, attended a one-room schoolhouse. Curriculum was not accredited. Teachers weren't certified, and all grade levels learned together. Compulsory education introduced busing of students to larger school buildings, creation of state standards, and the bureaucratic education system we now know today. So it didn't
Very
used to be.
cool.
It wasn't created as a societal indoctrination program. It became that.
Very cool. Very cool.
And back, in the one-room schoolhouse days, you learn things like farming and, what occasionally eventually came to be called home ec, home economics.
I love that.
I loved home ec.
Heck yeah.
And they were they still had it, but we're phasing it out. Both home ec and shop classes. I took shop too, metal and wood.
You did?
Mhm.
Yeah, you were a tomboy.
Yeah, I really was.
I
The only
love
one
it.
I didn't do was auto.
I love it. Yeah, just all those things. My wife came in the other day and she's like, "Hey, can you rehang the towel rack?" And so anyway, had to get some Molly boats, and she went off and ran an errand. She gets back, it's all fixed. I mean, it's like fixed,
Nice.
nice,
Nice and
nice,
solid.
nice
Yeah.
and solid. She's like, "How'd you do that?" And I'm just like, "I had training. I had
Yeah.
training, girl."
Yeah. I did
Every
too.
once in a while, that country stuff,
I used to be really handy, and then I just got sick of doing it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I used
But
to
just
take a lot of
knowing-
pride
Just knowing that you
in
can do it
building
at any time.
in building my
yeah.
own furniture
Yeah.
and fixing stuff. And then
Yeah.
I got, why the fuck am I doing all this shit? So I'm paying to pay somebody. This isn't what I do.
I trained to survive, and I
I'm such a
could do
yeah,
it.
I
but
could
man,
too. But
I would
you get
not
to a point where you don't want
that.
to. You just
I
don't.
would not want
No.
that. Just oh man, if the proverbial stuff
beyond
hit the
that.
fan, and one of my buddies, he's badass, outdoorsman, rafter. He and his childhood friend, man, they always go snowmobiling, right? This is probably 10 years ago. But anyway, something happened where it was just a kind of a perfect storm, type of thing, where his buddies, it was his snowmobile was having some issues. And so he got it started back up, and his buddy takes off, right?
Mhm.
And so after his buddy takes off, it had issues again. So when the buddy took off, he thought that Daryl was right behind him.
Okay.
So he goes off. So by the time he looks back and there's no Daryl, miles went by, and so then he turns around, starts looking for him, and it was right when it started to get dark. And so he had to basically say, "Hey, I am probably going to be stuck." His friend was nowhere. He called out, "Hey, hey," and all that stuff. And so, and this happened up at Tahoe. And so, yeah, so we were stressed out because then his wife, called and said, "Daryl hasn't come home," and, and
What
he's going to
happened
be
to
stuck.
him?
Oh, he made it through the night. He just a survivalist
You get
again.
separated. Like
Well, like I said, it was like a perfect timing thing. By the time he and it was storming too, right? And so they're trying to get back, and just he, by the time he realized that he wasn't behind him, he goes looking for him. It's probably a little bit blurry at that time. He couldn't find
Wow.
him. So they sent out a search and rescue that night, but had to call it quits. And so, yeah, he did the old school digging yourself a tunnel and just burrowed in there underneath the snow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Smart.
And yeah, the next day, they saw him hiking out, stuff like that. We're saying, "Holy shit." But how we get on that? How'd I get on that?
I don't
These are
know.
the things that happen
You're
sometimes,
right. That was an interesting tangent, though.
That is, I like it. So,
Oh, we were talking about like surviving and prepping, and back in the one room schoolhouse days, they used to
Oh,
teach
yeah.
you like actual skills, not just a
oh,
bunch of crap.
yeah, the home ec stuff. Yeah. Learn how to, I didn't learn how to do laundry from my mom.
Oh, really?
Mm-mm.
Interesting. And we
It's,
learned. Everybody called it cooking class, but it wasn't. It was
Well, now cooking's
E.T.
different.
L.T. Thomas was my teacher.
Yeah.
She was a black lady. My name is L.T. Thomas, and I teach foods. It ain't cooking, honey. It's foods.
I love it. I like her.
She was cool.
I love it.
Good old L.T. We loved her.
So ESEA, 1965, federal dollars for equity and disadvantaged students. The No Child Left Behind Nation at Risk, 1983, which sparked standards, kind of like the accountability era or a lack thereof, depending on which side of the lens you want to look at. The No Child Left Behind was 2001, where they changed the testing sanctions. If you don't do this the way that we're going to tell you to do this, then you're going to lose funding and stuff like
Right.
that. So the good teacher had no choice. Talking with a lot of teachers, they're saying that was the most frustrating things is they're always another test.
Mhm. And they
So
were having to
can-
teach to the test.
Yes.
That was a big thing. When I
Yeah.
lived in Texas, that was a
Yeah.
huge deal.
Yeah.
And because it was all about the sports,
Yeah.
Friday Night Lights and all that shit. My ex-husband was from Odessa, where, as a matter of fact, that show, he knew all of the people that were being represented by the characters. He could name every single one. He knew all of them.
Huh.
And he was from Permian. He went to Permian. And that whole thing of how that became all about the sports and that they started just teaching to these standardized tests was a huge deal in Texas at the time.
I love it. I love it. Hey, you know what time it is? It's time for the Life Coach Lightning
Right
Round.
on.
So let's see. What do we want to do today? I think I'm going to, you want to do 30 seconds or 60 seconds?
Let's do 60.
60. Okay. That's going to be your
My
stop
cutoff.
talking today.
Okay.
So life coaching lightning round. So I think you're going to like this one.
Okay.
What's the one thing that if Kel was the secretary of the Department of Education, okay, what's the one thing that schools should stop doing right now?
Teaching about anything other than that there are males and females. Any kind of non-binary encouragement needs to be stopped immediately.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the boys and girls. Yeah.
Queer and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Two genders.
There's two genders.
Yeah.
There are XX and XY.
I
Whichever
agree.
one you have determines which gender you are. I don't care what you represent as.
Right.
But nobody is changing bodies. Nobody is getting surgery. Nobody is, you know,
Yeah. In the
making any
schools,
kind of lifelong declarations while they are in the educational
it's
school
none of
system.
your business.
And not only that, it's
Yeah.
none of your business.
It's like that would be something that definitely should only be between that
Families.
child, the parents,
and
their
maybe their
medical-
doctor.
and their medical professional.
Mhm.
That's it. Seriously.
That's
I don't
it.
know why is that so
Why
hard?
is it in school?
Why is it so hard?
Why? And the other thing that needs to stop is drag queen story time.
Well,
I
there's-
love
yeah.
drag queens and have
Yeah.
many that are friends.
So
I do not
fun.
want them.
They are such a crack up.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't want them teaching reading to
No.
elementary school
Yeah.
children in libraries.
And not
no,
about
no. And they
genetics
don't
or-
they don't need to. I mean, they see them as lovable characters, like a story character
yeah.
with the makeup or
Yeah.
whatever. You know,
Oh,
they don't understand that.
they know how to groom.
But there you go.
They
You
know how to
said the
groom.
word.
They know how to
That's
groom.
it. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
Professional operation.
anybody who tries to say different is an idiot
Yeah.
or part of the problem.
So obvious.
It-
People
So obvious.
that if you do not have an agenda, it's pretty easy to see. It's pretty easy to see.
Right.
It's like that's what, say, for example, parents do, right? The parents groom their kids to be responsible adults.
Mm.
Parents
Grooming in and
their
of itself
kids-
isn't necessarily negative. It's
I
what
mean,
you're grooming for.
Exactly. You know, in the most crude, evil way of grooming, that would be, say, being involved with human sex trafficking, and you get this 5-year-old, and you know that you're not going to really put her to work until she's probably 13, 15, but all the time in between, you're grooming her. Okay. And the sickos, pedophiles and stuff like that, they if you don't have a parent that's on the ball, you know, these are things that can happen more often than you would think.
Parents do it to their own kid. My mother groomed me to be a whore. She totally groomed me to whore myself out.
What?
Not sexually, but just in life.
I see what you're saying. You're talking metaphorically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But parents do that. They teach their kids,
You're talking about from kind of like knowing your
sell yourself for
Yeah.
a job, sell yourself
Yeah.
for a husband, sell yourself for
yeah.
an opportunity, sell yourself. You just give it away. You just,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
an open season.
Get your foot in the door, fake it
Mhm.
till you make it.
Mhm.
and
kinds
do
of
what you
bad
gotta do.
advice
Yeah.
that's actually grooming you to be a commercial prostitute.
I got you. All right, next question. And relating to school. Okay, so let's see. Put your teacher hat on. Let's say that you're an instructor and you're giving some advice to either a student or a small group of students, and you're going to tell them one practice that they could start tomorrow for getting a feeling of belonging without a need for belonging. You see the difference? You see what I'm talking about? Because that's where the peer pressure is really powerful, right? Is when you need, that's when you do questionable things, is when you're trying to impress your peer group. And even though you know it's wrong, even though you know it could be dangerous, even though you know your parents and your support group
Have already
would not
told
want
you.
you to do
Mhm.
this, you do it anyway, right?
Mhm.
So what is something that you as a teacher in that moment would be able to say, I want you to do this. And if you do this, you'll be able to feel like you belong, but you're not going to be in
Yeah,
these
you're but
necessarily
you're not
danger things
yeah,
that
you're
you're
not
having to
trolling for
succumb
it.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I mean, sorry to put you on the spot,
no,
but
no,
that's the
no,
whole
no,
thing.
it's a good question.
Yeah.
I think just being authentic,
Mm-hmm.
like being authentically yourself in your expression, in your behavior, in the way you treat people, be consistent and authentic.
Yeah. Like underdog, be humble and lovable.
Yeah. And I hesitate to say, you know, be nice or whatever, because that can lead to people pleasing, which I'm
Yeah.
not trying to advocate. But if you are a genuinely nice person and you're presenting and expressing authentically, you will be seen as a nice person. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's I'm not saying, you know, you have to be a nice person to fit in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That leads to people pleasing. But if in your authentic expression you're a nice person, then, be that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that is a tough question,
Mhm.
right there.
Mhm.
It can get pretty deep depending on the situation with
Yeah.
any particular student. Now you're very thrifty, right? And so what would be thinking back to either high school back when you were there or a high school student now that may not have the best socioeconomic
Mhm.
situation,
Mhm.
right? So what would be or has been your best low cost move, that you've seen where a kid might be able to be engaged with friends and then at the same time not be exposed for being a poor kid or something like that. That's a
Um,
tough one too.
that is a tough one, but that could be.
I mean, that's real shit though.
Mhm.
You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Mhm.
They made movies where, of course, you have all the up-to-dos and the popular kids
The
at
haves
school
and
and
the
stuff like,
have-nots,
yeah,
yeah.
the haves and the have-nots. And there's a pretty cool have-not, but eventually somebody in the upper crust group, especially if there's any kind of pushback,
Uh-huh.
will then bring that up as a
As
way
a
to
denigrate, yeah,
ostracize
it's
them.
as a way
Yes.
to put themselves
Yeah.
above. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
I've seen that. And that's a bullshit move. That's petty.
Right.
That's really that just shows how the rich kid is insecure.
Possibly parented.
It probably, parented in an entitled way, or somehow gets the message that they're entitled or somehow better or above other people. And when they get into a situation where it's not obvious or apparent automatically that they hold this position, they will do things like that
Yeah.
to take other kids down around
Because
them.
eventually you do, you hang around with somebody long enough and then you do find out about your friends. You
Mhm.
find out about their home life
sure.
and, just the things like that. And then that's a vulnerable thing. Hopefully, the parents of the poor child are, kind of and they say we may not have a lot of money, but we have a lot of love.
Yeah, you want to
And,
hope, but
and that doesn't always
it
happen
does
for
not,
sure.
no, and especially not nowadays where
Mhm.
there's so much keep up with the Joneses, and you got to
Mhm.
have the iPhone, and you got to have the this and the that and the games and it's tough. I mean, it's always been tough. You've always had those, competitions of who has what stuff and this and that. But nowadays I think the
Exactly.
divide is even.
So what do you think about homework? Homework, we of course grew up with that, and there's a push now to where homework should be reimagined, reduced, or removed. So which one of those would you lean towards, if any at all?
I would say
Reimagine, reduce, or remove?
it depends. It depends. I would, for the most part, say removed, but there, I think, are some classes that are more experiential, or where more experiential situations should be introduced, to where it's not homework per se, where you go home and have to sit at a desk and fill out paperwork or do shit on the computer or whatever. More of a participatory, experiential, like when you go home and do, like go do this and then come back to class and say how it went or
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you experienced or what you
And then
learned.
incorporate some
And then it incorporates into
rating.
the growth
Yeah.
of whatever the class is. Unfortunately, in primary public education, there isn't a lot of that kind of learning going on. It's mostly, reading, writing, arithmetic,
Yeah.
straight,
Rote
stuff.
Yeah.
And I just, there are some things where you just need to practice, so, homework in that case of, you're not going to get enough of the actual activity, whether it's like learning how to print, learning how to add, when you're really getting the foundational basics and you need to practice and, 45 minutes a day or 3 days a week in a classroom isn't enough.
So it sounds like you
But
you
I'm
kind
pretty
of
much
want to
against it.
you want to kind of reimagine it. Yeah,
but
for sure.
eliminate in a lot of cases.
Gotcha. All right. And then in one sentence, what is your phone in class policy?
I am if I were a teacher, I would collect them all at the beginning of class.
So your one sentence is, give me your phones.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
So
I would not put up with kids having access to a phone while I'm trying to teach them something.
So I want to talk about some searches that produced some champions in the classroom, standout educators. And I'm betting that you may not, if probably don't recognize these because I did not, but I still want to run through these and just kind of riff off them. So Marva Collins, recognize that? Marva Collins.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So, basically she started to, kind of elevate the expectations to high expectations for students. Remember a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the difference between having a high bar and a low bar, and of course the low bar is easier to get over, but there's something to striving for that high bar, even if you fall short, because then you have the choice, to say, well, do I want to continue working, to get over that bar, or is that something that's just out of my reach, but then something underneath that high bar rung is still significantly higher than if you would have just been going for that low bar from a metaphorical, standpoint. But anyway, Marva Collins, high expectations, deep care in under-resourced settings, so she, made some very significant cultural changes and outcomes. Rita Pearson, she is noted for the quote of "kid needs a champion." Then I find that quote interesting because it doesn't say every kid needs to be a champion.
Right.
Every kid needs a champion.
Correct.
And why do you need a champion? You need somebody to look up to,
and somebody
to role
that
and
looks,
emulate, that's
somebody
decent.
that supports you too.
Yes.
That encourages you.
Your support system.
Yeah. That can see the things, the positive things in you that you don't.
Yeah.
And can then encourage that.
So Jamie Escalante, I think this is the gentleman that, remember that movie with Edward James Olmos, Stand Deliver? A negative times a negative equals a positive. A negative times a negative equals a positive. So there was this true story, great movie. You should check it out.
What's it
you
called?
would love it. Stand and Deliver. So again, poor socioeconomic school, and this teacher, let me just say, without being a spoiler, he was a difference maker. And so he took these kids not known for their academic skills and things, and then he got them in a contest. I'm pretty sure that this is the guy, because my notes here say that he was a teacher that taught relentless rigor, trust, and it led to AB calculus success against the odds. And so I just want to set the stage that the odds were, he got them into an academic contest. And I don't want to tell you about the drama, but there was some drama about stuff like that. So I'm almost positive that is what that's from. Aaron Gruel is a student voice, and he basically became well known about journaling, and how this builds identity, relevance, and grit. A gentleman with AI tutoring to personalize at any scale is Sal Khan, Khan. Ron Clark, is that the guy that you mentioned earlier? A teacher just basically puts together this joyful culture in his classroom.
No,
Very
Carl
clearly
Rogers.
oh, Rogers, okay. Very clear and, engagement through with energy, accountability, and stuff like that. So this, again, just wanna, highlight some of these, and I can only imagine how many teachers that are not referenced here, that didn't come up on the search, that there are across the country. It is a worthwhile avocation. It's something that we as a society, we can't get away from it. We need teachers and mentors, to come in and help our youth. My life, I don't know about you, Cal, but you shared a little bit about your journey having your mom as a teacher and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And without knowing it, my teachers when I was growing up were, of course, an extension of my parents, like it or not. That's the job they chose. And I was a little rascal to them. And I could have gotten, I guess, a lot more trouble than I did if my teachers would have so chosen,
Mhm.
to do that. I think probably the reason that they looked past it, at least one shared this story when he said that there was certainly some favorability that went my way because I was on sports teams
Mhm.
and stuff like that. My parents were known in town, not because again we were wealthy, but because of them just being good people, and law enforcement and stuff, background. And so I'm sure there was a little bit of apprehension, about that. But I was kind of like in the classroom, I was kind of like a little class clown.
Mhm.
That was my attention seeking, these little one-liners. And I wouldn't really be defiant or a jerk. I never
Mhm.
challenged a
The
teacher.
teacher,
I
you were
never
just kind of a cut up.
yeah, I never would challenge. Because still, if I get enough trouble, I would have to answer, to my parents. So I kind of pushed that line. Coaches, teachers, kind of giving you those second and third chances. Dang, I made it. I made it through.
Mhm.
With pretty good grades, except for my sophomore year. That was the rough one. But yeah, coaches and teachers, and there were times where they threatened to take things away. And what it really comes down to is God, they cared
Mhm.
at least about me and some of my friends, not all of the students. They probably, as you can imagine, they're humans at the end of the day. So whether they're hearing stories or whether they're observing about some, they just write them off, right? They just write them off. It's
Right.
just like that, that guy's,
Yeah, not gonna make it, no
he's not going to
chance,
make it.
whatever.
Yeah. So I'm not even going to waste my time. But was there somebody for you that was outside of your parental influence from a teacher standpoint that you'd
Several.
like to give some shout outs to and
I
talk
had my first one was Joyce Kaiser.
about what?
She was a school psychologist on my mother's team of teachers that helped with the mainstreaming curriculum design program. She wasn't actually a direct educator of mine, but my mother
Oh,
would take me to work with her, and Joyce would be there. And we had a very special relationship. I was devastated when she passed, but we had a thing. She had a thing um, about Peanuts, the cartoon, and she was Snoopy and I was Woodstock.
oh, you guys
And
were buddies then.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And she would just kind of look out for me. And she would, like mom would take me to the office and be doing her thing, and I'd be in with Joyce and we'd be playing games, puzzles, or, always educational stuff, but fun for me,
Hmm.
And she just had a soft spot for
And
me.
what grade were you?
This was until she passed when I was in my early 20s. So my whole life
She
up to
was
that
like
point, she
when
was
did you first meet her though?
probably at 2 or 3.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Because my mom, this whole team worked together their whole
Yeah.
career
Yeah.
for years,
And
decades.
so she was a
And
teacher also.
Joyce was she was a psychologist,
Yeah.
school psychologist,
Huh.
educational psychologist, and she had a dual degree. They all did.
Did you feel like you could say things and talk to her that you couldn't with your mom?
Yes.
With that?
Yes. And yeah, and she was great too in that I couldn't trust a lot of adults
Mm.
because I would tell them shit and they would go tell my mother. I
Mhm.
would tell them shit in confidence
Mhm.
and then they would go tell her. And thinking that they were helping me in the situation because I would be complaining or crying
Yeah, but then
or
you couldn't
whatever.
trust that person, so you lost.
And what would happen, they
somebody
didn't
that you
know,
could
they
talk
didn't
to.
realize she was a covert narcissist and would beat me. She would beat me. Anytime she got a negative, any kind of report from anybody that she perceived was negative or reflected badly on her in some way. And nobody knew this.
Yeah.
So I was very, very isolated, very self-protective, very, like, who can I trust? Who can't I?
Yeah.
Joyce was one that I
And
knew
you
I
lost
could
her-
tell things
And
to.
you lost her when you were 20. That's
Yeah,
young.
I want to say I was 19 or 20 when I got that
That's
phone
tough.
call. That
And-
was hard because when the phone call came, I answered the phone and I sounded a lot like my mother.
Uh-huh.
And the woman who called was the school, she was the secretary of the team, and she just started talking.
Oh, thinking it was your
Gail, you're not going to, Gail, I'm so sorry to tell you this, Joyce is dead. It wasn't even, if she'd known it was me, she would have said, honey, I'm so sorry. I wanted to let you know that Joyce Kaiser has passed. Gail, I got to let you know Joyce is dead. What? I dropped to my knees. I said, this isn't Gail, this is Cal. Oh, I'm so sorry. Is your mother there? And so, yeah, that was.
What any other mentors besides Joyce?
Yeah, let's see. There was Mrs. Smith was my 5th grade teacher. There was Mrs. Upton was my 3rd grade teacher, and Mrs. Smith was my 5th grade teacher. They were both
Rock stars.
very good to me. They
Yeah.
were both very good to me. And
Those are big ages too for girls in 6th grade.
Yeah. Yep. And Elaine Smith was awesome because she was kind, strict. You know what I mean? Like she was strict, but she wasn't a bitch. You know what I mean? Like she would hold you to the line, but she was kind about it, and she was sweet because we had Miss Morancic, old lady.
That's the way you said that.
Yeah,
her name.
and like never married, old maid. She was the classic old maid, hair up in the gray hair in a bun with the dresses with the neck up to here.
Boy.
She was a bitch. Everybody hated her. Like if you got Morancic,
She probably
you were like,
thrived on the fact that everybody hated her.
did.
Yeah.
She was just one of those, like the original quintessential crazy cat lady.
What if she had like a split personality where she was like that, but then alter ego? She's just
it's interesting because you wonder now, and like, yeah, like, was she like some little hoochie on the side? Or something? Like, who knew?
Exactly.
I doubt it. Like she was born old.
Yeah.
She was just an old lady.
Yeah.
Miss Morancic. She like everybody. Oh
Yeah.
God, she was so nasty.
Did she retire before or after you graduated?
Oh, she was still there when I left, so she's got to be dead, long dead by now. But
I'll be so happy.
She was one of those teachers that you were just sure didn't like kids. You're like, what the hell are you doing here?
This is not the place for you.
This is not the place for you. You know what I mean? Like she was miserable. She was unhappy.
Did she have kids?
No. She
Maybe
was an
that's
old
why.
maid. She was literally an old maid, never married, no kids. And
Yeah.
back then that was way like that was
that'd be
very
tough.
stigmatizing.
Yeah,
back
that'd
then.
be tough. To be around kids and you know what I mean, without having raised them.
Mhm.
That would be frustrating.
Exactly.
That would be frustrating.
And at that time period, in the 70s, like family and like was a big thing. Like you just expected that everybody had a family and you hung out with you did holidays and the family. Like family was a lot bigger back then than it is now. Like
sure.
you didn't have people like if somebody disowned their parent or their family or was the black sheep, that was a very specific thing. Like nowadays, you can be a black sheep for anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back then, like there were very specific, like if you got pregnant out of wedlock or
that's what I was going to
like
ask
that
you.
kind of thing.
What else?
You get shunned.
What are some of the things that you would get disowned?
Pregnant
Besides murder.
Yeah.
Like,
Pregnant out of wedlock.
Pregnant out of wedlock. Go to prison. Go to prison.
Go into committing some kind of public crime.
Right. Violent crime.
Or any crime that got known throughout the town because they would print it in the paper. Like
adultery. Cheating.
Yeah, I was going to say adultery was a big deal back then. You could easily get shunned for that. Drugs, were a big thing. Like if it got like you knew people like Mother's Little Helper was a thing back then. Like Valium, parents, There were a lot more stay-at-home moms, and they were all on Valium, and the kids would steal it.
Oh,
And that was a lot. People would talk about, oh, it's a gateway drug, but bullshit. Valium was the gateway drug. It was the shit in your mother's closet where you started.
yeah.
We started
Well,
with,
that's like we talked with Ed, the whole gateway thing. It's just like,
it's
okay,
crack.
so like, yeah, that theory is just like, so why would you stop there? Like, why don't you
Mhm.
just keep going all the way back to milk
That's
and
exactly
say
right.
that that's a gateway? So here's the thing to that point. The reason that marijuana may have been some sort of gateway was because it's
Heroin.
well, no,
Well,
just like
that's
that,
a good
but it's
point.
illegal.
Yeah.
So the only way that you could get it is to go to a drug dealer. And if that drug dealer was selling marijuana, that's
Chances
probably the
are-
low end of what he deals with. He's got
Exactly.
cocaine, he's got heroin, he's got other illicit
And
drugs,
what
and
they would-
marijuana just happens to be something that they also have. And if somebody's only going there to buy it, eventually that drug dealer is just like, hey, have you ever tried this?
That's what I was
Here's
going to
some-
say.
here's some
They would
free
give you a
stuff.
bump. That's it.
Here's the free stuff right
That's
here,
it.
so.
That's exactly right. I was just
Yeah.
going to say how they would get them hooked was they'd start low, and then it would be like, oh yeah, hey, I got
Yeah.
got a little bit of this time.
Give out some free samples.
Mhm.
Hey, just like this. So I already know the answer to this. So let's go into your what's the verdict. So go thumbs up or thumbs down. Say you agree or disagree, and then tell us why. So we already know on the verdict of kids banning their phones during class time. We know that you're not going to let them do that, but just shortly explain why.
Why I'm banning phones?
Yeah, why you would ban phone.
And I wouldn't ban them. I would collect them. And when the
Put
kids
'em
would
in a
walk
bin.
in, they would have a slot. It would go in the thing. They make cabinets actually for this.
Yeah.
I would have one of those. And because I will admit that there occasionally are times when a kid would need to reach the parent or vice versa in the middle of class. And nowadays, you can't just go down the hall to the payphone.
Yeah.
You can't just go down the hall to the office.
Would you let them take their phone if they had to go to the bathroom?
No.
What
Oh,
if
no.
they had to go number 2?
No. Once you're in my classroom, I have your phone.
Yeah.
Unless there is an explicit emergency,
Yeah.
it stays with me until the class is over.
I like it.
And the reason is obvious. It's distraction. The kids would you rather be listening to, geometry or, American History 101 or dicking around on Twitter, or
Well, yeah.
TikTok or whatever it is that,
You're always looking for distractions there.
Absolutely.
So now,
And they don't see it as a distraction. To them, that's their life. That's their quote unquote real life.
they're getting some dopamine juice. From
Yeah.
that thing.
Yeah. Class is
Hook me up.
School is an interruption.
Exactly.
It's
So now what do you think about thumbs up or thumbs down? High school kids with AI writing tools that are allowed with disclosure. So if they say, hey,
Yeah.
just like, hey, just letting you know.
I
Closure.
assisted.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
It's got this built-in accountability.
it's got built-in accountability, but it's you are learning from it as it is generating information for you.
Mhm.
That you whether how you represent that information as coming from you, as AI assisted, as from AI, whatever, it isn't so much what's important as the information itself and the retention and reinforcement of it. So what AI does is it linguistically expresses things in ways that you would take a lot longer to think of, if even ever get there. And the way it expresses information can make it very accessible to you as well in ways that you would never have thought of to express that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I learn from it.
Yeah,
I don't just use it mindlessly. Here, get this, do this for me, and then just dump whatever it gives me to whatever. I then take what it's given me
Right.
and then go through it myself, update it, change it,
Yeah.
validate it, first of all, because AI lies,
For sure. Then that's what I was going to say is like, the advantage is to not have it write for you, but to incorporate it as a writing partner, to where it can offer
It can
insights.
edit it.
and-
It can proofread it. It can
Yeah.
clean it up for you. It can.
Yeah.
It can.
It's going to save you time, but you don't want it to do the thinking for you.
Of course not.
Yeah.
No, it's got to be. You then have to go back to
At least not
whatever
all
it
the time.
generates, and then put your flair
Yeah.
on it. And
It's a-
sometimes it'll generate exactly what you would have said, and you're okay. That's
Yeah,
fine.
and
But
it's
you
a-
have to go back and check it.
And it is a huge issue in education right now.
Mhm.
Now, what do you think about this?
It was when the internet came out, when Google
Yeah.
and internet search, not even Google, long before Google,
Yeah.
but I remember being in school, in college,
Mm-hmm.
as the internet was being expanded.
Yeah.
And that was a big fear at the
Yeah.
time of teachers, like, how are we going to know? And
I was back between
late 80s.
2009. Yeah, I was definitely in then, but the last little roadmap that I had was between 2009. So I graduated in 81. So before computers
Mhm.
in the office, and then
Well, I remember when
back-
it was a big deal to have a calculator,
oh yeah,
or even open book.
your Texas Instruments.
Uh-huh.
Those things were expensive.
Remember those?
back
They were
then. Oh,
so
yeah,
expensive.
But you had to have them.
You had to have it.
But then back in 92, so we're going, about
what, 35
6
years.
years, after, computers were definitely in the office,
Mhm.
space at that point. And then another 10 years. So I've had these kind of, a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been able to experience back before computers
We
were
were born
even
with
around.
them, but not on them.
Exactly. And so
Mhm.
as an older demographic, I'm thankful that
I
I
am
have
too.
kept up,
We're
with it instead of being an old person that's not tech savvy.
No, me too. And
Yeah.
I get really annoyed, especially by people our age,
Mhm.
that still are like, "Oh yeah, I'm computer literate. Oh, I don't know how that works." Really?
Yeah, you haven't
Fucking
tried.
really?
You haven't tried.
No, you're being lazy, and
So
stop
now-
putting that on other people.
So I don't know if I caught this. So what do you think, thumbs up or thumbs down on 4-day school weeks? Instead of 5 days, 4 days.
Mm-mm. No,
No? Why?
no, because
not?
parents already have a hell of enough time getting their goddamn kids to and from school without buses. Like, whatever the hell happened to buses? No, that's way too disruptive. Way
So
too
you-
disruptive.
So you
Because
so
let's face it.
what about regardless of the parents. So I'm talking about the
No.
the students.
Nope, they
and
need to be
the
in those- they-
instructor. You're saying 5 days a week.
Yep.
4 days a week. You're being lazy.
Because let's face it, school is also somewhat babysitting. It's a break for the
What
parents.
if it was 4 days with longer hours? So you squeezed 5 days in 4 days.
No, because
You're
the
just
kids burn out. Too much.
Anti-days.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm for shorter days,
Yeah.
but 5.
Okay. You guys heard it here. All right. Now, I like this one. Okay. So what do you think about old school standards-based testing, right? What does that mean? No zeros.
What is it?
Standards-based. Well, it says there are no zeros or retakes. Okay. So standards-based, no zeros, no retakes grading. So it's kind of like you get one test.
Okay. So no zeros.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they're saying that if you take the effort to taking the test, you're not going to get a 0, even if you get all the answers wrong, which doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make sense either.
Yeah. So I'm not
What's
sure.
the point of test?
But standards-based grading, I'm assuming that you're an advocate, for that. The standards, of course, merit-based. Here are the standards right here, and you either meet them or you don't.
Do no zero. Okay. No zero. Oh, it's no zero. Just is a curve.
Yeah.
It says.
So it's a grading curve.
That's what it sounds like.
Oh.
Philadelphia.
Now, what do you think?
It says no zero policies set the lowest grade at 50%, even for no work. So yeah, you're getting credit for nothing. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. See,
Absolutely not.
yeah. Okay.
It's the worst of all. Yeah. Thomas B. Fordham Institute says no zeros grading policy is the worst of all worlds.
There we go.
More and more schools have adopted it.
Now, what do you think about this thing called Universal Career Pathways? So it's career technology and education. So with basically what AACT, but they're doing this from the 8th grade, right? Now, my grandson Maddox is actually in the precursor to this. Actually, no, he's in it. That's right. He's in it because he's going to be preparing for AACT.
Okay.
So, but this basically gets them, of course, to focus on a certain area, discipline, area of interest, right? Which this is your query, but to me, just to kind of set it up, is it's one of those things to where I think that we ask our kids to decide about very serious life matters before they're even qualified to entertain. Like the question of, what do you want to be
when
with
you
your
grow
life?
up?
Yeah.
Who the fuck knows?
That's what I'm saying. So that should be
We don't have that used to
fielded at
work.
about 24 to 28, maybe.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, not at 18.
No, not even close.
And they know this. They teach this in school that you're not mature. You don't have your cognitive ability till you're about 25.
And you have
so
too many
why
options
are
now.
you forcing this down their throat?
Back
Like,
then,
yeah.
I think when they used to do that, there were only so many careers you could go into.
Right.
I mean, really, and most people were being kind of molded into kind of a certain, lawyer, doctor, engineer, laborer, construction, secretary.
Right.
I mean, but it was pretty cut and dried as far as what the main options were. Now, you can make it up,
What do you mean?
I mean, you can make up, a job and create your own business, So I think it's a whole different mindset now, even as far as knowing, I mean, you can have a general idea, like when you're little, oh, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be this and that, nobody
Everybody
settles.
dreams about
you
stuff,
have dreams of what you see on TV or in the movies or whatever. But, and I think kids, some kids know, oh, I'm going to do this, and they do it, and that's what they do. But nowadays, like, people don't even have just one career anymore or just one job for the rest of your life. I mean, if most
often do people say do something that they thought that they were going to love for 10 years, and they're like, this ain't me. I got to do something different after about 10 years.
Oh, this is what'll make me a lot of money,
right,
or is a secure industry, and then there's no such thing anymore now. Stuff can get disrupted literally overnight. So, yeah, and I think in general, that whole paradigm is shifting of, like what functional, repetitive thing can we, slot you into and make you sit there and crank out for 8 hours a day. Like, we don't even, needs are changing so much that a lot of that widgetry, if you will, those widget jobs aren't even, not even relevant.
What do you think about on the parent side, them in some states, you can have vouchers and opt out if your school in your district isn't performing up to your standards, then you can move your kids. You think that's a good thing?
I think that's a great thing. Yeah. I've never understood. I actually had a crush on a kid when I was in high school who lived out of the school district, but my district and the series of schools were so good, and he lived in Philadelphia, and those schools were terrible. So he lived with his aunt, or his aunt had an address, in my district, but so he would used her address, and it was always a big deal. Like, we were always afraid that they were going to find out and kick him out, and blah blah blah. And it turned out it was no big deal. It really turned out to not be a big thing, but back then it was. And as a matter of fact, we had Marty Sally. The Marty Sally case was a big deal. He was a basketball player.
Marty Sally.
And they recruited him kind of hush hush into our district, and it got found out, and it was a big deal. And they ended up making it right. They worked it out, and they got him like a legitimate place in the district to live, and blah blah blah. But I remember that being a big scandal of that he was going to get kicked out, and it was like, and I'm like, who gives a fuck? Like, what is the big deal with where you live absolutely mandating where you have to go to school? And I thought, if your parents are willing to take you there and I didn't see what the big deal was.
Yeah.
Because I knew most people wouldn't do it, even if it was an option. So I didn't see why was that such a big deal. So no, I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
I think if you want to drive your kid to a different state, to a different
Yeah.
city, to a different whatever. If you're willing to get them there, as long as you're
Yeah.
not relying on the system to make it happen for you and facilitate it,
Yeah, and I think,
you should be able to take them wherever you feel is best.
Yeah, because of course there are some situations where parents have felt and probably still do feel a little bit trapped, which is interesting. One of the references for our uh, life coach lightning round and the matter of facts relates to the Brown versus Board of Education decision, right? And so the significance of that, of course, is that it was a good heartened step towards the equality or equity with the students in our school system and stuff like that. But what we found out, right, is that just because you legislate access, does not mean that you're going to have access without or with belonging. You see what I'm saying? So they desegregated schools. Sorry, thank you. But at the same time, just because they were allowed to be in the schools didn't mean that they were going to be accepted by the schools.
Right.
And that's a very important, I think, distinction.
Sure.
When that happened, for example, the ESEA Act in Education, 1965, and this was the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. That's what ESEA stands for, particularly its Title A program. And this authorized the federal aid for the education of disadvantaged students, right?
Mhm.
So, it's a good thing, but again, over time, that's all that they were worried about. Wasn't necessarily making sure that the students are educated properly.
Right.
They're just
It was more the
worried that
appearance
their
of, like,
butts are in the seats so we can get
So we
our
get paid.
money. That's it,
Mhm.
and so again, not to slam on anybody in education, but these are just the things that we discuss. And of course, A Nation at Risk, 1983, the significance of that is that this is what launched the accountability era. Accountability, of course, a loosely used term, but it helps explain today's test pressure, right? And it has certainly had its trade-offs because just say the kids learn how to take tests
Mhm.
in order to help the teachers succeed. They
Mhm.
feel the pressure that the teacher gets. They learn how to take the test, and the information that they're taking the test, they're not
Isn't ever
understanding
integrated.
it. It's not
Never gets
ringing.
integrated. So
And
stupid.
so anyway, that's a big problem. And then let's see, what's the last thing that I wanted to mention here was, again, it's just we've already talked about it with the testing parameters that came out in 2015. It's just giving again the states more flexibility in order to dance around the requirements that the federal government has for them, and that's even changed even more in this last election cycle. So if I could wave a magic wand, it's like I think I would start with what's best for the kids first in the 21st century. What's best for them? And I always feel like we need to back up a little bit and let's let the kids be kids. Let's let
Mhm.
the kids be kids.
Mhm.
There's talk about, like, even social media. We had this as a topic last week, and there's talk about what age, like, let's start banning kids being able, yes, with the
Well,
social
whatever.
media. You
I
can,
mean, 13 used to be, you used to have to be 13 to,
yeah,
sign up for certain sites and this and that, but there's no way to enforce it.
and
If
that's what they're
parent and
saying.
you used to be able to count on parents,
Hmm.
restricting access.
And that's what they're saying. They're saying, with the household, it's kind of like, not that every kid would be able to do it, but they would probably, if you took all the phones away and restricted their access to a certain age, how they're going to do it. They're going to get mom and dad's phone,
Mhm.
and they're going to find how to access that, just like they find the combination to the gun safe or, whatever.
But it would
that
be
they
a
wanna
lot
find it
harder
to.
that if they had their
Well,
own damn device.
But yeah,
Because
it's
the
not
phones are always on mom and dad.
for sure.
You know what I mean? It's not like they're laying around where the kid could just sneakily, and you have locks and,
Yeah.
passwords. There's
I'm
ways
an
to
advocate
restrict
for
that.
making it more difficult.
Oh God, yeah.
Because we're the stewards, right?
Yeah.
We're the ones that are responsible
Yeah.
for the upbringing and the grooming in the appropriate way of our youth. So well, heck, Kel, that's episode 25. That's all I got. Can you think of anything else that you wanted to kind of visit or hit, before we wrap this guy up?
No, I thought that was a pretty good one.
Have fun?
It's still a conundrum though. Yeah. It's like, what do we do?
We didn't solve anything.
No.
We talked about it, though. That's what we do. Well, everybody, that's episode 25. And that was our milestone class session, Cal.
Cool.
We dug into some of the little realms of public education, saw how it stands, how we got there, and everyday heroes that are lifting kids higher. I like
Yeah,
it.
and I think that's really where we need to focus. We need to really start calling out the good teachers.
Yeah.
And highlighting the good practices and the positive things and the things that are working instead of constantly focusing on what's wrong. We know what's wrong.
Yeah. I love it. And one of the things that was wrong, if you missed last week's episode 24 with what's the matter with social media burnout, check that out. And go, we had a deep dive on attention, belonging, digital health, all that stuff. But next week, hey, episode 26, we're going to keep plugging. It gets real with what's the matter with relationships.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
Oh, man, Kel, we're going to unpack the 3 Gs, right? 3 G spots. Ha-ha. Ghosted, gamed, and gaslit. Why they happen, how to spot them, what to do next. But big thanks to World Matters Incorporated and our producer, Big Bongo Productions, Active Life Integrated Health, Skin Tuition, Soul is Better, and America Matters Media on 93.7. This is the G-Man for Kel saying stay curious, be kind, and we'll see you in the next class. Until then, see ya!